Today we're going over the most horrific things the Ottomans did to their enemies. Number 1. Impalement. It's the spring of 1453, and Mehmed II wants Constantinople to get the message before he's even through the walls. So on the night of April 28th, when 40 Italian sailors swim ashore from their burning fire ships, he has all 40 greased and run up onto sharpened stakes in a row along the waterline, facing the city for the defenders to watch. The whole point was to make it last. The executioner threaded the stake in slow, steering it past the heart and the organs so nothing killed the man fast, then stood the pole upright and let gravity take over. The body slid down the shaft an inch at a time over hours, sometimes 3 full days. That was impalement working as designed. A death you could read from a mile off. So the Ottomans planted the stakes where people were sure to see them, along the trade roads and at the city gates. The winter before the siege, they pulled a Venetian captain named Antonio Rizzo off of a ship in the Bosphorus, beheaded his crew, and stood Rizzo alone on a stake at the edge of the strait, basically a scarecrow for the next ship through. Each pole ran close to 9 bananas tall, so a merchant met the warning before he ever met a guard. And the Ottomans were so good at this that they trained the one man who'd turn it back on them. A Wallachian kid named Vlad grew up as a hostage in their court, watching exactly how it was done, then took the throne and aimed it straight at the empire that taught him. In 1462, his men impaled thousands of Ottoman soldiers, and when Mehmed marched into Wallachia, his army walked into what the chroniclers called a forest of the impaled. 20,000 bodies on stakes across the field, crows already on the dead. Mehmed had taken Constantinople and faced down armies on 2 continents. He stopped here, reportedly deciding he couldn't take the country of a man who'd do something like that, and turned a good chunk of his army home. The student outpublished the school. Number 2. The Hook. Over on the Istanbul waterfront, the Ottomans kept a special setup just for pirates and bandits. A tall wooden frame with a beam across the top and a row of iron hooks filed to points, the same kind a butcher uses to hang a side of beef. They tie the guy's hands and feet behind his back, run a rope up over the beam, haul him into the air, and let go. He'd come down on the hooks, and wherever the iron caught, it held, and his own weight worked it in deeper while he hung there, sometimes for days. What makes the hook worse than the stake is the part nobody's steering. On a stake, the executioner picks the angle and paces the whole thing out like a craftsman. The hook just hands the job to gravity. A guy might catch by a single rib and last 3 days over the harbor, or land wrong and be gone by morning. And the empire didn't have to care which way it went. They'd basically built a machine that ran on bad luck and cost nothing to run but the rope. So they put these frames wherever the crowd was thickest, on the docks and at the gates, and let them do the talking. And the idea got around. The same hook shows up across the Ottoman Balkans, used on the same kind of men. It even turns up an ocean away, in the 1770s on the plantations of Dutch Suriname, where an iron hook under the ribs and a slow death hanging from it was the punishment for slaves who rose up. Wherever somebody in charge wanted a death slow enough to draw a crowd, they reached for a hook. Number 3. Flaying alive. It's August 1571, and Lala Mustafa Pasha has a problem named Mark Antonio Bragadin. For 11 months, this one Venetian lawyer has held the walls of Famagusta with a few thousand men against an Ottoman army of 100,000. And in those 11 months, he's buried 50,000 of them in the ditches under the walls. 50,000. Sit with that number for a second. The richest empire on earth threw an entire army at a few thousand starving guys and just watched it sink into the mud. And the whole Mediterranean was keeping score. So when the food finally runs out and Bragadin walks over to surrender, the Pasha greets him like an honored guest, praises the defense, and promises the survivors safe passage off the island. He meant about none of it. 4 days later, with the keys already in his hand, Mustafa's face goes cold. He accuses Bragadin of killing Muslim prisoners, and he slices off the man's ears and nose right there in the tent. Outside, his soldiers cut down the rest of the garrison. Then they slow everything down on purpose. They leave Bragadin in a cell for 2 weeks so the wounds go septic. Then bring him out for the main event. Sacks of stone roped to his back for a slow lap around the walls he'd just defended. Up a ship's mast, strung there for the sailors to jeer at. And on the 17th, a column in the main square where they tie him down and start peeling the skin off him, starting at the scalp. He prays out loud until, somewhere around the chest, he stops. And that was the whole point. Mustafa wanted the entire world to watch the man who'd embarrassed his empire get taken apart in public, one strip at a time, until there was nothing left to respect. And then it backfired on him spectacularly. They stuffed the skin with straw, dressed it up in Bragadin's own armor, sat it on an ox, and shipped it off to Constantinople as a trophy. 9 years later, a Venetian sailor named Girolamo Polidori straight up walked into the imperial arsenal, grabbed the skin back, and carried it home. And Venice sealed it in a church where it still sits today. So the empire that set out to erase Marc Antonio Bragadin ended up handing Venice its own saint. And 2 months after that column, the fury over his death helped drive the Holy League right into the Ottoman fleet at Lepanto. They tried to unmake a man and built a martyr instead. Number 4. Severed heads. In 1570, somewhere out on the Cyprus plain, a Greek peasant is hauling a severed head 33 miles across the heat, balanced on a dish. The head used to belong to Niccolò Dandolo, the governor of Nicosia, and the job's pretty simple. Carry it over to Marc Antonio Bragadin and Famagusta and set it down in front of him. The note that came with it was basically, surrender, or this is you next. The Ottomans understood what every group chat eventually learns, which is that a head makes your point a lot faster than a letter. Bragadin looked at it, manned his walls anyway, and, well, you already know how that one went for him. Once a city fell, the heads went from messages to trophies. When Famagusta dropped, they took the heads of Bragadin's officers, the General Astore Baglioni among them, stuck them up on the admiral's mast, and shipped them home to Constantinople to lay at Sultan Selim II's feet, right next to Bragadin's stuffed skin. A matching set. And back in the capital, heads were basically decoration. The main gate of Topkapi Palace had 2 stone niches the Ottomans kept stocked with that week's freshest criminal heads. And when one went bad, they swapped in a new one. Like changing the flowers. So every foreign ambassador rolling up to talk business had to walk in under a little shelf of rotting heads. Welcome to the meeting. The Ottoman court didn't even keep an executioner on staff. The chopping and the strangling got handed to the palace gardeners instead. These guys, the Bostanci, were a 5,000-man crew, and their normal day was watering the Sultan's tulips and rowing his boat. The head gardener took the big jobs himself, so a grand vizier who fell out of favor would get invited in, treated all polite, walked out into the garden, and quietly strangled by the same man who'd spent that morning deciding where to put the roses. In this court, killing you was just landscaping. Number 5. Galley slavery. Go down below the deck of an Ottoman war galley and the smell hits you before your eyes even adjust. Hundreds of men sit chained to the benches in the dark, packed shoulder to shoulder from one end of the ship to the other, hauling the oars in time for as long as the officer up top feels like making them. Everything else on this list was a performance with a crowd. This one ran in the dark, below the waterline, in the one part of the empire nobody was ever meant to see. The whole fleet ran on muscle, and the muscle was captured Christians. Most of them got pulled off raids. Ottoman ships and the Barbary corsairs would hit some coastal town in Italy or Spain and haul the locals off in chains, and they ranged as far north as Ireland to grab villagers right off the beach. The rest showed up as prisoners of war. Either way, they all ended at the same bench, the same iron shackle, and the same oar, which ran close to 7 refrigerators end to end and took several men just to move. They rode barefoot in their own filth on biscuit and water, a whip walking the gangway to hold the stroke, and they slept right where they sat. The shackles never came off, and most of these men died on that bench without ever leaving a name behind. Then, on October 7th, 1571, the hidden thing finally surfaced. A Christian fleet caught the Ottoman navy in the Gulf of Patras and smashed it at Lepanto. And as the boarding parties went hull to hull, they knocked the chains off something like 12,000 Christian rowers. Men who'd spent years folded over an oar in the dark stood up, walked out onto the deck on legs that barely held them, and realized they still had a life left to go back to. For one afternoon, the engine the Empire kept hidden below the waterline climbed up where everybody could see it. Number 6. The Skull Tower. It's May 1809, and a Serbian commander named Stephen Sindelik is watching an Ottoman army pour over the lip of his trench on a hill called Segur, just outside Nice. He knows exactly what capture means: a stake. So he turns his pistol on the powder magazine sitting under his own feet and pulls the trigger. The blast takes him, his men, and the entire Ottoman front rank that was climbing in over them. It was a spectacular way to lose, and it cost Khurshid Pasha thousands of soldiers, and the Pasha wanted them paid back. He had the heads cut off the Serbian dead on that hill, close to 1,000 of them, and paid a furrier to peel the faces off and stuff them for the Sultan. The bare skulls he kept, and he built them into a tower right beside the main road into the city. 17 skulls to a row, 14 rows on each side, 15 feet of faces staring down at everyone who came up that road. Read it and think twice about rebelling. People read it. They just took the opposite lesson. Every Serb who walked past those 952 skulls left angrier than he came. And within 6 years, they rose up again. And that time they won. Over the years, families started prying skulls out of the wall to bury a brother or a son, until only 58 were left, and the Serbs built a chapel around what remained. Sindelik's own skull sits by the door now, lit up behind glass. The tower the Ottomans put up to crush a people turned into the monument that people built their freedom around. They carved a warning, and the warning became a shrine. 6 messages the Ottomans wrote in bodies: a stake on the shore, a hook over the gate, a skin in a church, a head on a mast, an oar in the dark, a tower of skulls. All meant to be read. The catch with writing in bodies is, you don't pick what they say.